This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. Hi, I'm Anna Tyler and this is Thank You Mama. My guest today is Monica Cermeno from Mexico. Monica has lived in the US since 2007, and Monica has an incredible profession. Monica used to be a performance testing engineer at Boeing, which to me sounds so exotic. Currently, Monica is a stay-at-home mom for her two children, Daniel and Anna. Hi, Monica. Welcome.
Hi, Anna. Thank you.
Monica, will you tell me about your mom? Mama, is she Josefina or Josefina?
Josefina, she goes by Fina, and it's known by my kids by like Grandma Fina.
And Grandma Fina is from Mexico and grew up in Mexico. And you told me she's one of 13 children?
Yes, 13. Back in those days, they didn't believe in birth controls. It's just as many kids as you can have, type of thing.
But she also comes from a very religious family, you said. Is that Christian religious?
It's not a Christian, and it's just a other non-Christian religion. A mom says that they were Christian for a few years, the first years of her life, she remembers. And then at some point they change to and I can't remember the name of it, like to translate in English, but they've always been religious through her entire life.
So Mama Fina worked as a nurse. She managed to get through her education to become a nurse when she was young, before she got married. But then there's a very sad story about how she had to quit her job as a nurse.
Yes, for her, really, education was very hard because she wanted to study. But with 13 siblings in total, really became whomever was in middle school, then that was the only kid that could go. So if you came to be at the age where it was your turn, you will have to be skipped. And then the next kid maybe will get to go. So she didn't really get that opportunity. So she tried on her own, working and basically saving her own money to go to night school. So eventually she got her degree for working as a nurse in this hospital. And she was living at a different town that her parents, when she was working as a nurse, she was living with her aunt and her uncle. And because she was studying and working, she will be sometimes out all day. And especially when you work as a nurse, you know, in the hospital, you get shifts and sometimes you get night shifts. And she will have to go out all night to work. And her relatives at the time, they didn't believe that she was working and studying all day. So they call her parents and they said, you know, your kid is out wee hours of the night and she never comes, and they didn't believe she was doing this thing. So her parents had to go back and basically take her back home with them. And so she had to stop that phase of her life and start another one when she went back to school and working at home, like cleaning houses and other things so they could finish college.
And then she got married and had you and your two brothers. And you told me that while she was taking care of you, she also continued working. She was working as a seamstress.
That is correct. She met my dad when she came back and when they were both studying. And they got married and had my older brother and myself. And my dad was also just beginning, so he didn't make a lot of money, so mom needed to help out. And on top of that, my mom wanted my dad to finish his college, so she was working to make money so to support the house and also for him to be able to finish college. But And I feel sometimes like this is what she wanted for herself. She wanted to finish, but she didn't have the opportunity, so she wanted my dad to do it. But my dad, well, at least this is what she tells me, is that he will come back tired from work. So then he wouldn't have the energy to finish college. So he didn't, in the end, end up having a degree. So that was frustrating for mom, because she felt like she would have taken that opportunity and seized it, but she couldn't do that herself.
But then she did. In her 40s, she did.
That's right. Yeah. Once we basically, my older brother and I went to college. I think she felt like she had more time now, and decided that she wanted to go and finish up her studies and to have a job of her own. And since she had been sewing for so many years, she was really good at this job, and she really enjoyed it. So she found a job as a teacher at a local school where she was teaching seamstress courses. And she really enjoyed doing that.
And then at one point she started her own business, didn't she?
Yes. When this is something that she had been trying to do for many years. Through my upbringing, I remember she tried to get a business of making mops. That was one, and that didn't go through. She tried to create another business where they were making T-shirts with one of her uncles from the U.S., and that didn't pan out either. So there was, several years ago, the Mexican government was trying to encourage local businesses to promote jobs or the jobs growth in the area, and they were giving a certain amount of money to small groups of people that will get together and follow these plans to develop a new business. So she didn't really want to do this, but her friends asked her to help them out because she was so good at this particular job. So she agreed to help them out, and she drove to all the places they needed to go and bought the machines, and eventually opened up this seamstress business at large scale. And at the beginning, there were a few things to work around, and then the people that agreed to do this business with her, they just got disillusioned from the idea, and they didn't. Basically, they were not there every day working 8 hours a day. They'll just go there here and there, and then eventually, these other people just gave up and did not want to continue. So then she stayed there, and she still has her job, and she has work every day. She likes it because she says that she meets people every day and talks to people every day, and she feels needed and appreciated, and that's what she's still doing up to this point.
And she's running her own business now.
Yes.
And she's a very involved grandmother. You told me she comes and visits and spends whole summers here and supports you while the kids are out of school.
That is true. I very thankful to her for being at home with us, because she has to close the business for 2.5 months to come to visit us. And I asked her, like, Daniel was 5 years at the time, and I was working, and I didn't want him to go to a camp place for 2.5 months. He was very young and he was not enjoying it. So I asked her if she could come and help me out, and she agreed. And I remember the people that expected her to be there, they will call her all the time, when you're coming back and when you're coming back. But she will just tell them in September. And after that, she came every year. Even though she didn't have to anymore, she just really enjoyed it and loved spending time with her grandchildren. And she's just a great grandma.
How female is that, that we manage to run a business or have a job and still be there for our family? I never heard of a grandfather who would do something like this.
Yeah, that is, like I said, I just feel very grateful to her for always being there for us in whatever we needed. And one of the things she says, because she's always very helpful to anybody who wants help. And one time when I was working in Europe, and I always call mom on the weekends to say hello. And She tells me about all these things that she does and the things that she helps, people that she helps, and sometimes it doesn't, they don't return the favor. And I always thought, Mom, why you keep doing this? And she said to me, "Is like I do this not so I can get something in return. I just want someone there for you. If you need help, that someone there is gonna be there to help you out." And when I was young and working in Europe by myself, there was many things that could have gone wrong because you're a young person alone in a city you don't know, and many things at work could have gone a different way for me. But I feel that because of all the things that she did and the praying that she did and the good actions that she did, that somehow that was returned to me, because I feel always very grateful of the opportunities that I had, and and all the things that went right for me. And I think is in some ways because of the lovely work and help that she did.
You told me when we talked about this lesson, you put it very nicely. You said, Mama Fina would say, when you do something from your heart, it will come back to you 3 times, and not necessarily from the same person or situation. So, hey, now we are talking about the first lesson. Good things come back to you 3 times.
That is true. That's what she believes strongly, and that's one of the lessons that I tell my kids every day. You can't control what other people do. You only control what you do. So whatever you do, do it because it's something that is going to give you satisfaction, and leave it at that. If it gives you satisfaction, you don't need other people's respond or telling you thank you or doing something for you. And that's something that I learned from her through examples and just random conversations of, why do you do this? And that's always her response.
But this is such an important lesson to me, because if you're concentrating on what you can control and don't try to control other people's reactions or what they do, I think that saves you a lot of disappointment. You know, if you're always aware that you can only do your best, and what others do, others will do. That's a great lesson.
Yes, it is. For sure, it saves you a lot of disappointment, because you don't know what other people are gonna do or gonna say to your reactions, and you can only control what you can do and say, and that's as much as I can do, as any person can do, really.
So Mama Fina is a very, very hard worker. Is this something you think you've inherited from her? I mean, you don't become a Boeing performance testing engineer without hard work.
She was always working, and all the women in her family had jobs to do. They had to do laundry, they had to help with cooking, they had to deliver tortillas, and the boys had to go to school and study. And that's what they had to do. So she was really early on learned to work hard. And even though she couldn't do the things she wanted, like go to school, like her brothers, she did the best that she could with what she had, the opportunities that she was given. And I think through her life, that was how she was able to finish all her education. She couldn't do it when she was little, when she was supposed to do it, but she did it later in life through hard work and by herself, just following what she wanted to do. And for me, there is this story that when I first applied for this job for a performance testing engineer, I knew that I wanted this job. I wanted to travel, and that's what this job opportunity was. And I had 2 interviews for it, one technical and one that was just talking with the CEOs of the company. And I didn't know this at the time, but apparently I did really poorly on my technical interview, but I did great on my second interview. And they were the 2 main people that created this company were talking among themselves, saying like, we shouldn't hire her, and the other person was like, no, we should. You're not gonna regret it. This is someone that you want in your team. Like I said, I didn't know this then, but I learned it like 2 years into this working for this company. And my main idea was I want to work hard. I just want this job so it was in me. I don't know how. And at the end, when the second interview came to an end, it's like, well, do you have any questions for me? I didn't have any more questions for them. I just knew I wanted to work there. So I said, well, I know I want to work here for you. Tell me something about yourself. And he stepped back and he said, out of, 13, 14 people that I interviewed today, you're the first one to ask me this. I don't know if that's what helped, but I was hired eventually. And in my first year and a half of working there, I became the top employee for their company for that following year. So working hard, I mean, is something that maybe has been taught by me, but just watching and hearing the experiences that mom had or myself, my own upbringing. But it's a skill that I value greatly.
And it connects to something you said. She told you or she taught you, which is sometimes in life you are what you can be, which means that accept the circumstances and what they allow and just make the best out of them, which obviously she has always done. But I want to move on from this hardworking Mexican ladies and ask you generally, you are my second lady from Mexico, and I hear about these incredibly hardworking women who guide the family in a way. And sorry to say it, but don't hear much of the men being present there. And I'm wondering, I'm thinking about my Croatian roots, where Croatians are very much like all the Mediterraneans, like Italians and maybe Spanish, where we have this very macho culture where men are so present and loud and strong, and they seem like they rule the families and the society. But actually we have these incredibly strong women who just guide everything from the background, who are the actual backbone of the society and the families. Is it similar to Mexico?
Yes, I think that it is similar in a way, and this goes back to something I was mentioning earlier, how as a very young age, as a girl, you are taught to do all these chores at home that make you quite independent because you are able to, in your mind, just said, okay, my job is to do, this is expected of me, and I'm supposed to do all these chores. And I don't know, for my brothers, some of the chores were expected from them, but I don't think nearly, like I remember telling mom, why are my brothers not helping with mixing the dough for the tortillas? Why it's just me? And I remember when it was our turn to mop the floor, I talked to my brother, come on, let's do one and one. You do the mopping one day, I do the mopping the other day. Because it was a hard job to do because you're little and you have to squeeze the mop. And it was really hard. And I wanted even treatment. But he just refused. It was like, no, that's your job. And I remember it made me very angry that was not the same. But in retrospect, I think that helped me be just more independent. And like if I wanted something, I could go do it myself. And that reflected in my studies. I studied whatever I needed to from school. I did myself. And I remember my brothers needing some help with math or whatever subject. So I'm not sure how it relates. I just can see in the end how it helped me personally and in my schooling, in my studies, and what I pursue in life. Just looking at the results in the real world when you go to work, I was able to get a good job and had a good income, and professionally ended up being more successful than both my brothers. And I don't know if it directly correlates, but it's just an observation. And similar with my mom and my dad. Mom is a business owner and her 65 years old, and my dad's still working for another company, and somehow they balance it out.
It's fascinating how things that seem tough and rough and unfair to us can turn into our advantage. Isn't it amazing? It's really that I'm fascinated about that.
The beauty of it, I don't even think is consciously done.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna do this to put her or this person in an advantage. It's just cultural.
Yeah.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's very different in the US, but in Mexico is definitely that way. And in other countries, it seems like in your case, was a similar environment.
Let's go into something or things that Mama Fina maybe was not able to teach you. Was there anything that you're like, this I had to learn by myself?
Yes, there's this is something that I didn't even realize it was hard for me to do. When I talk to her, and whenever if there is some sort of sentimental conversation, the word "I love you" in Spanish was never. I don't remember ever being said at our house, and I didn't realize how hard it was for me to hear it in Spanish until I was talking to my family about this, and my son was just jokingly just saying "I love you" in Spanish, which is "te amo," and he was just repeating it back to me, and I couldn't hear it. It just made me feel weird, and I realized it's because she didn't use that a lot, and she shows us. She still to this point shows us how much she loves us with her actions and with being there every time we need her. But just saying that word was not something that she was able to do. And I think it's because maybe she didn't hurt her herself. So that's something that I'm trying really hard just to make sure my kids are aware of it. And every day I tell them, "Did you know that I love you?" And they say, and they're like, "Yes, Mom, you tell me every day." But it's like I'm making a conscious effort. So this is not something that is weird for them. And hugging and cuddling, that's something that I do with them too every day. So that's not weird.
And we always talked about we already talked about the cup of coffee thing, where you said you're trying to change that consciously.
That's an absolute yes. I want that because I was telling my husband, my mom believes that the girl in the family is what she refers to a cup of coffee. And she means that when she's old and she needs help, she's going to look back and say, "Oh, I need a cup of coffee." And who's going to be there to give her the cup of coffee? That's me. So I'm her cup of coffee, and that's how she refers to me. And I was talking to my husband, like, why am I the only cup of coffee? She has other two sons that could also help. And I have two kids. I don't want only Anna to be my cup of coffee. I want Daniel to also equally be there. And I was talking to him because my husband's mom passed away and his grandma passed away. And in both occasions, my husband was, out of two boys, he was the one that was the responsible one that was in charge of making sure her assets were cleared and all the responsibilities you have to do when someone passes away. And I was thinking, like, you both were boys, so why does it have to be one that takes this job? So I hope that in the future, in our family situation, they both can equally support each other to be both my husband and I, cup of coffees.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful, wonderful way to end our interview with a cup of coffee.
Or tea.
Or tea, which we're drinking while we're chatting. Thank you so much for being my guest, and thank you so much for sharing Mama Fina with us. I think we learned a lot from Mama Fina today.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you for having me. It was my pleasure, and I can really talk about my mom for hours. So I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you, Monica. If you have a mama you'd like to share, you could get in touch with me at info@thankyouMama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider. That's ANATAJDER. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.